The Rams make a huge free agency signing in the beginning of December. We're going to talk about who that player is and what it means for the team for the rest of the season and also for the next couple of seasons, as this player will be under contract for a couple of years. All on today's episode of the Rams Digest. I'm your host, Joshua Giron. If you guys are not subscribed, go ahead and do me a favor and click that subscribe button. It is free and costs you nothing. 95% of you guys who watch the videos are not subscribed. I know a lot of you guys are coming back to watch the video, so just hit that subscribe button for us. It does us a huge favor and lets us know that you guys enjoy what you see. But let's get into this, man. Right off the rip, let's talk about this. Emmanuel Forbes, the Rams claim him off of waivers. This is a former Commanders first round pick, just dating back to last season. Yes, that is correct. This is a second-year player, Emmanuel Forbes Jr., that the Rams are bringing in. So a very young, talented player from the Washington Commanders. Obviously, we have a lot to discuss here, and I want to make sure that I emphasize that off the rip. It is an exciting thing that the Rams are doing, I think. I think many teams could have went and put a waiver claim in and probably did put waiver claims in. But the Rams were lucky enough to be the ones to claim Emmanuel Forbes off of waivers. A lot of positives here. You claim him off waivers so his contract remains intact. He's a first-round rookie, so that the money is decent, but it's still a rookie contract rather than going out and signing a player. Maybe he plays well the rest of the year and you have to worry about a big-time extension immediately. You still got him on that more of a rookie-based type of deal for a couple of more seasons. But a lot to discuss, right? You don't just get a former first-round pick off of a tree and just find him in the streets and just say, you know what, this is our guy. He's all of a sudden going to be this incredible first-round talent player, right? A lot to discuss with Emmanuel Forbes as to why the Commanders moved on from him and why it makes sense for the Rams to pick him up. So let's get into that right here with this first story. And I want to point this one out here because it's a tweet that I saw in a response to an Emmanuel Forbes signing post on Twitter. And it says, from DraftKings, it says, notable first-round picks after Emmanuel Forbes Jr. Christian Gonzalez, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Zay Flowers, and Jordan Addison. Essentially what this tweet is saying is that these guys went after Emmanuel Forbes, right? The Commanders, instead of cutting and releasing a first-round pick, right, a first-round 16th pick in the draft from 2023, they could have had Christian Gonzalez. They could have had Jackson Smith-Njigba. They could have had Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison on their roster. All positions that they needed, right? They needed a corner, they needed some receivers, and they could have taken one of these players, but they decided to go with Emmanuel Forbes. Two sides of the coin here that you can really look at this and say, yeah, the Commanders messed up and they drafted a player they ended up cutting within 2 seasons, and not really a great thing for the Washington Commanders perspective. But the reason why I think you want to look at it from the other side of things as a Rams fan is you say, wow, this guy had so much talent dating back to just last year. He did so much or performed so well in whatever it was, whether it was interviews, combine, Senior Bowl, whatever you want to say, whatever it is. I don't even know if he participated in the Senior Bowl, but you guys here get what I'm saying. Whatever he had done in college was enough to show some NFL scouts he was better than Christian Gonzalez and Jackson Smith-Njigba and Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison, right? Some big time young talented players in the NFL right now. Emmanuel Forbes at some point was looked at by some professionals in the NFL as better than these guys, right? And so from the Rams perspective, you want to see what it is that they're seeing and what it is the Commanders saw in Emmanuel Forbes. We're going into Dan Quinn here. Washington Commanders head coach Dan Quinn says, yeah, Marshawn Lattimore's close. We talked about that. I think it was Friday for him being back in it. And so we made the decision to release him being Emmanuel Forbes. Really just the best opportunity for the team at this point. Now, back to the what I was saying. Emmanuel Forbes has some kind of talent, right? For them to notice him and pick him up there. So that's a positive for the Rams. There was some talent there, and we'll talk about what Sean McVay had to say about his talent. But Dan Quinn, and this is where the story gets kind of muddy and interesting, right? Dan Quinn is known as a defensive guru. He's not just known as a defensive guru who's worked with, defensive linemen, players like that. He's also worked a lot with cornerbacks, right? And he's developed a lot of cornerbacks. And so you kind of have to now pause and wonder, how come a guy like Dan Quinn couldn't turn Emmanuel Forbes into this great player that, similar to what he's done in the past, right? Dan Quinn working with the likes of Richard Sherman, Trayvon Diggs out in Dallas, Deron Bland out in Dallas, right? With Deron Bland being a 5th round pick. How can you turn a talented or a player who wasn't talented enough, right, to get a first round, second round, third round pick notoriety, and turn him into what Deron Bland was, right, for the Dallas Cowboys, and then turn around and go work with Emmanuel Forbes and then not make that happen, right, with the first round talent, and then give up on him really quickly, right? There's 5 games left in his second season, but this is Dan Quinn's first season with the Washington Commanders. What was it that Dan Quinn decided to say, you know what, this is just not going to work out for us here, and I have no hope in being patient with this kid for the rest of the next few months to possibly allow him to work on his game over the offseason with me and develop into one of these great cornerbacks that I've worked with in the past? What was it that Dan Quinn is seeing that maybe isn't really connecting? And what's interesting here too is that Dan Quinn, and the quote continues here, and I'll move on from what I just posted, but going into the story of him talking about the release of Emmanuel Forbes, Dan Quinn did say, and he's kind of a player's coach, and he did kind of say, you know what, look, I wanted to give, Emmanuel Forbes an opportunity to have a change of scenery. I think that's just what he needed. And to me, that kind of just says that Dan Quinn, one, is trying to protect the player a little bit and say, hey, look, I'm a player's coach, and I think players respect what I say about him, and I'm going to keep that in mind and be kind about what I say about Emmanuel Forbes, this 23-year-old cornerback who was just drafted in the first round last year, not succeeding here. You know what? All's good here. We're going to go ahead and move on from him, give him an opportunity to have a change of scenery. Great things to hear if you're a player. Makes you want to kind of play for a guy like Dan Quinn. He's not going to throw you under the bus even after he just released you, after your team just traded for a better player at your position, right? In Marshawn Lattimore with Washington. But still, it just really, really begs the question as to why would Dan Quinn, is it just because he loves this player so much? He's such a player's coach that he decided to be kind and let go of this former first round pick, get nothing in return for him, at this moment, get nothing in return for him, and move on, right? It just doesn't really make 100% sense, and you can't just act like, yes, that makes sense. Dan Quinn is a player's coach; he's going to be kind to the players. There's something there. But Dan Quinn obviously gonna go ahead and continue to say positive things about him, which is nice. Moving on to our head coach out here in Los Angeles, as the Rams head coach Sean McVay had to say about what Sean McVay had to say about the trade. He was a guy that we liked and had familiarity with just based on the evaluation coming out of Mississippi State. And then I thought there was some good tape that he's put out there when we've gone against them, particularly later in the year, last year. Sean McVay had to say that about Emmanuel Forbes. So McVay seems to have liked him coming out of college, right? Again, some scouts in the NFL seem to have liked him enough to be this first-round talent. So there's something there with talent-wise, but there's also something there negativity-wise, right? You don't just cut a player in their second year that was a first-round pick for you, 6'1", 23-year-old cornerback, long arms, shows flashes. So it just makes you beg the question for sure of what happened. But hey, the Rams are here in a situation where you have a guy who's possibly talented, whatever it is, off the field stuff, attitude, who knows what it could be, a plethora of things that could be. The Rams got him. Can they make it work? Of course, probably not next week, maybe not even the week after that, but can they get in the next couple of weeks some kind of production from Emmanuel Forbes that could, add to this room that we talked about the last couple episodes, right? Maybe not the most talented defenses we've ever seen from the Rams, but growing in talent, young talent. Can Emmanuel Forbes add to that and be a huge piece moving forward for the next couple of seasons? That's really the big question here, I think, when we're talking about what this guy can do for the Los Angeles Rams. We'll move on from that and we'll discuss the next bit of stuff here. Still talking about Emmanuel Forbes, of course, but talking about his statistics for the last couple of seasons. In 14 games played, we're looking at 38 total tackles, 35 solo tackles, 3 assisted tackles. Again, tackling, when you're talking about defensive backs, isn't really the most important stat. No sacks, no forced fumbles. You can look at that as maybe he's not the most aggressive tackler, if you will. Again, these are all very kind of small sample sizes for the most part in terms of a cornerback's perspective. But one interception on the year. Last year, one interception on the year. This year in 6 games, so a total of 20 games, 2 interceptions. We're looking at from a guy like Emmanuel Forbes. So again, just kind of looking at his numbers, his raw data. A player who again hasn't really done the most production wise in his young NFL career, but again, we're looking at the positives here. Long arms, tall, 6'1" cornerback. Seems to have his moments against, he's had I remember he had this beef, Commanders versus Eagles, AJ Brown situation where he had highlights. He had moments, right? He had sparks and flashes of this player who was locking down one of the best in the game in AJ Brown for the Philadelphia Eagles. You just want to see if we can get those flashes and turn them into long-term production throughout the full season when it comes down to the Rams side of things. So that's kind of the way we see it. If I had to predict how this is going to turn out, again, very, very tough to kind of call. I really, really like what the Rams are doing here by picking up a player like Emmanuel Forbes. You got to take a chance. Doesn't really cost you much. You got to take a chance on a guy like Emmanuel Forbes, a former first-round pick. Hope for the best. I think Emmanuel Forbes can definitely be a player who I can see developing under a Sean McVay-led team, playing hard, that togetherness, that kind of never give up mentality, this hard-nosed football team who's kind of just, even a 500 team, just that positive energy, the positive locker room that it seems the Rams kind of constantly have, right? Regardless of what's happening on the field, regardless of their record, they seem to have this kind of family energy about them at all times. I think that will help. That change of scenery, like Dan Quinn was talking about, I said in the later quote, I think that change of scenery can really be big time for a guy like Emmanuel Forbes, and I'm really hopeful that this can be a cornerback of the future for the Los Angeles Rams. But you guys let me know what you guys think about the signing. What do you think is going to happen moving forward for Emmanuel Forbes? Are you hopeful? Are you a little bit kind of skeptical about it? You guys let us know in the comments below on today's episode. That's going to do it for me, and I'm out.